Today I dare to tell my truth about Truth or Dare. Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and today I'm going to look at 2018's Truth or Dare. Now this movie confused me before I even hit play, and the reason for that is because I watched a movie a year ago made in 2017 called Truth or Dare, about a bunch of teenagers, 20-somethings, whatever, playing a game of Truth or Dare with demonic presence and back-end consequences, and it forces you to do things. And so when I heard about this movie, I didn't know that it was a different one, and it took me a little bit to figure that out. And once I did realize it, it's like, okay, so I need to watch this now. So I did, and it differed quite a bit from the first movie that I had seen a year previous. Overall, I thought the best way I can really describe this movie is enjoyable but forgettable. And I think the best way to really discuss that is to go into the categories. Let's just jump right into it. So, as always, 5 different categories, each category worth up to 20 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot of this movie is a group of 20-somethings are going on their last spring break ever, and they decide to go to Mexico. And when they do, they are befriended by a peer of theirs, and who's also on vacation. And he's, like, well, I got a place, I can show you that's kind of cool, a little party place, and takes them to this abandoned temple, religious, place. And when they're there, they bring out the alcohol and they sit around in a group, and the guy suggests, hey, we should play Truth or Dare. And from there, things get supernaturally real, and then they have to figure out why this why they're being forced to play this game. If they lie on a truth, when they ask Truth or Dare, they say truth. If they lie on that truth segment, then they are they're penalized. If they are dared to do something and they don't do it, they are penalized. And the supernatural forces that are in play are the ones, that are coming up with, well, here's the truth that you need to tell. Here's the dare that you need to do. And of course, it escalates in its extremity, or its extreme nature. So they have to figure out a way out of this before they die, and before they potentially have to kill other people, and, go through this escalating dare sessions and so forth. And the one thing that I really did like about this movie is that cat and mouse element between the characters and the demon, that was, kind of in the back end thing. First of all, the nature of when you have a movie like this and the characters are playing Truth or Dare with killer consequences to it, it's difficult, I would think, to come up with a logical explanation, or not even logical, but a plot explanation that halfway makes sense, that ultimately gets you to the point of where you're at, where, this game is deadly now. And I thought they actually did a fairly sufficient job of doing that. Just with that one simple line, I thought it worked really well. It's not really spoilers, because this is a spoiler-free review, but they had a line in there about how, demons, you always hear about them possessing people and objects and locations. Well, why not an idea? Makes enough sense to, okay, that's passable. Let's continue on. And that's how I felt about it. I thought, it was like, okay, you know what? I'll buy it. I'll buy it for the sake of, turning my brain off and enjoying this movie. And I did. And I'm glad I did. So the plot, I thought, did a fairly decent job of that. The problem that I had with the plot, and I gave it 10 out of 20 points, and here's why. The the aspect of this movie that I really liked was the characters trying to figure out a way to comply with the rules while at the same time twisting them in a way that allows them to avoid the most extreme nature of that punishment or that dare or that truth. And but they only really touched on it a little bit. They had some moments of doing that, and that was, I think, the part that I enjoyed the most, and I really wish it had done that a lot more. There were parts of it that I thought were pretty smart, but ultimately it just was a fairly forgettable movie. But I mean, you kind of know what you're getting into with a movie like this. You know, it's a Blumhouse production. It's truth or dare with killer consequences. You know, I mean, the plot is, I gave, 10 out of 20 points. I just really couldn't give it a whole lot more than that. It wasn't terribly imaginative. How they went about it was pretty smart. But that's when we get into the intent category. And this I gave 18 out of 20 points. And that is because I understand what they were trying to do. And I understand the cash grab nature of a horror movie where you put 20-somethings in there. You come up with a ridiculous situation to put them through a meat grinder and you hit go. And I thought this movie did a very good job of that. So while I may not have been the biggest fan of the plot in general, what they were trying for, I think they achieved spectacularly. So 18 out of 20 points there. The acting, I mean, what can you really say? I thought it was a fairly okay job, but it's a pretty forgettable movie with pretty forgettable performances. I give that 11 out of 20 points. I thought the main characters did pretty okay, but I just not beyond okay. They certainly weren't bad. There was nothing about it that, and I will say that for the 2017 Truth or Dare, those performances, some of them were pretty bad. So this definitely elevated that. The technical, I gave 14 out of 20. And I don't know. I just really couldn't give it a whole lot more than that. There's not a lot of effects to be had. One character even put it that when the demon shows up to deliver truth or dare things, I'm not going to say how, I'm not going to say anything along those lines, but when it does, it looks like a bad Snapchat filter. And that's what one character said, and I have to agree with that. It wasn't the most impressive style effect to be had for what they were trying to accomplish. But otherwise I thought it was pretty good. The camera work and the lighting and the color palette that they used between America and Mexico, I thought worked really well. 14 out of 20 points. I think that's pretty good there. Fear quotient. There was a lot of elements of this movie that was entertaining, that was interesting from characters butting heads. I mean, the truth portions of Truth or Dare, they're forced to reveal secrets that they were keeping from one another, so it caused conflict there, and that was interesting. But the one thing that this movie wasn't was terribly scary. It had some good moments. It had some good jump scares. I gave it a 6 out of 20, but overall, it was mostly just a interesting but forgettable exercise in a what-if situation with the how to get out of these deathly situations for these characters. And that's pretty much all it was. So, there wasn't a whole lot of terror involved. And, that's pretty much the score. That gives us a total of 59 out of 100 points. There were specific moments in there that I want to discuss further, but if I do, it's going to go into spoiler territory, and that's not what I do here. It is what I do in the deep dive spoiler-filled discussion, and that's where I'm going to be putting that. So I invite you to watch Truth or Dare because, again, enjoyable but forgettable. It's not going to stick with you, but I think it's worth watching. I think it is something that I would recommend, just not with a lot of enthusiasm. So I would recommend that you do watch Truth or Dare, and then you go back and watch the deep dive discussion and engage with me in the comment section. Until then, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.